Shantae introduces players to the colourful world of Sequin Land, where a gang of pirates have come into the possession of a machine that has the potential to destroy the tranquil beauty of the environment. It's Shantae's job to track these villains down and bring them to justice. Essentially a platformer, the game is set across a generous amount of levels and arms the player with various abilities in which to fulfill this goal. Shantae possesses a basic attack to subdue enemies, as well as the ability to transform into several animals through performing specific dances. These can be learned throughout the course of the adventure, and by doing this it makes it possible to access hidden areas and items. A whole host of enemies occupy these areas, and upon defeating them, Shantae can acquire gems dropped by them that can be spent on life restoring items, as well as upgrading your attacks. This adds a nice sense of progression to the experience and gives the incentive to explore everything the game has to offer. The first thing that will strike you about R-Type DX is the incredible amount of content that is included. There are 5 separate games from the series presented in one package, but the standout feature has to be DX, which mashes together the first 2 R-Types into a cohesive experience for players. Essentially a side-scrolling shooter, there's a variety of ships in which to use, as well as weapons to take advantage of, and with several power-ups littered throughout the playing field, taking on enemies never feels overwhelming. Visually, the experience is quite impressive for a Game Boy title, and presents a range of well-designed backgrounds and ships, but what is hugely impressive are the bosses that you encounter throughout the levels. Most take up nearly the entire screen and present a real challenge, with several requiring distinct strategies in order to overcome. If you're a fan of side-scrolling shooters, this one is essential for the Game Boy Color. When talking about Mario Tennis, many will instantly jump to the notion of it being a sports game without any substance, a game that ideally just passes the time with a standard tennis setup and Nintendo's characters thrown into boot. These people are wrong, as Mario Tennis is a surprisingly deep and rewarding experience that shares many similarities with RPGs due to the incredible tour mode that tasks players with taking up the role of one of 2 characters, in an adventure that sees you starting a tennis career in the hopes of becoming the best player of all time. A world hub oversees the entire game and allows the players to partake in several activities such as training and minigames, which help progress your character's abilities on the court, and through the use of a leveling up system, it allows the player to tailor their character to their liking and ultimately craft a winner that is capable of taking on Mario. This hands down has to be the finest sports title on the system and should be a part of everyone's collection. Tetris DX is an enhanced port of the original Game Boy game that was released at the beginning of its life. For those not familiar with Tetris, it is essentially a puzzle game that sees the player connecting falling blocks with the intention of creating rows that fill the screen from left to right. This version adds in a couple of new features that help set it apart from the original, one being a new mode that sees the player taking on the computer in a standard versus fashion, as well as a new difficulty level known as Ultra that sees the amount of playtime being limited to 3 minutes in which to achieve high scores. If you're a fan of Tetris and are looking to pick up a version on the system, this is the one to get. Lufia The Legend Returns is an RPG that continues the series that began its life on the Super Nintendo. Players assume the role of a young man known as Wayne after an evil force rains terror upon his village. He is plunged into an adventure that spans the entirety of the kingdom and sees the player exploring the world in order to bring an end to the evil plaguing it. As with most RPGs, players can expect to acquire a whole host of abilities that will aid them throughout the journey, as well as in combat. These are known as IP skills, and they can be found throughout the world and within the several dungeons that comprise the adventure. Now when it comes to battling, your character's position plays a huge role in emerging victorious. They are placed in rows which determine how much damage they will take, as well as deal out to enemies, which adds a huge tactical aspect to each encounter. While there are some minor issues that might turn players off, Lufia still offers one of the finest RPG experiences on the system and is well worth a look for anyone who is a fan of the genre. Dragon Warrior 3 is a remake of the NES classic Dragon Quest III that was released almost a decade prior. It manages to repackage the adventure and introduce it for the portable with many notable changes and upgrades that make this the definitive version of the journey. In all honesty, the story is nothing to write home about, but what the game gets right is the incredible gameplay. Each character is entirely customizable due to the deep yet simple class system, with every battle extensively tying into this aspect of the game. Encounters play out in a turn-based fashion and grant the player a whole host of magical abilities and attacks that can be upgraded through the journey as well. On top of the main objective, there are a ton of minigames and side content, and is sure to keep players busy for the duration of their time with it. Super Mario Bros. Deluxe is essentially a port of the 1985 classic that released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It adds in several new features as well as content that helps pad out the experience and makes it one of the best ways in which to play this unforgettable platformer. As you would expect, players assume the role of Mario or Luigi and are tasked with saving the princess by traversing and overcoming a diverse set of levels that take advantage of the several mechanics in play. Mushrooms, firepower, stars, and a variety of power-ups litter the world in which to aid the player in accomplishing this goal. As well as the standard adventure, it also introduces something called Challenge Mode, which sees the player tasked with taking on 32 levels and collecting several items scattered throughout each of them. This mode is a nice distraction from the main events and provides the player with a ton of unlockable extras in which to earn. Those looking for a Mario adventure on the system, Super Mario Bros. Deluxe represents the best of the bunch. Sharing many similarities with the first Metal Gear titles released on the MSX and NES, Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel once again sees the player filling the role of Solid Snake. Taking place from a top-down perspective, the action sees Snake infiltrating a region of Central Africa known as Gindra, in the hopes of taking down a guerrilla group who have their hands on a new type of Metal Gear. The player will find themselves sneaking past enemies by utilizing a variety of mechanics such as crawling, knocking on walls to distract enemies, and also employing a whole host of weapons and items that will help achieve this goal. As well as the main campaign, several other modes comprise the experience, such as VR that serves as a training ground for players to hone their skills, and with over 180 extra missions that will test your proficiency, it is sure to last you some time. Ghost Babel offers a generous amount of content and is sure to satisfy both fans of the series as well as newcomers alike. Link's Awakening DX is a remake of the Game Boy Classic that reintroduces the adventure with new, colourful visuals as well as a few extra features that make this the best version of the game on the system. Once again, players assume the role of Link, who awakens on a mysterious island and is plunged into an unforgettable journey that presents one of the finest narratives in the series. As you would expect, players have access to a wide range of weapons and items such as swords, arrows and bombs that help even the odds against the onslaught of enemies and obstacles the game throws at you. As well as following the main narrative, it's possible to partake in a variety of minigames such as fishing, minigames and even side missions that help flesh out the world and the lives of the several NPCs that occupy it. Some of these are the real highlight of the experience, which reward the player in meaningful ways and cement Link's Awakening as one of the finest entries in the franchise. Pokemon Crystal was the final mainline entry in the series to release on the Game Boy Color, before moving the franchise to the Game Boy Advance with Ruby and Sapphire. It essentially offers the same experience as Gold and Silver, and is set in the Johto region, which tasks players with becoming a Pokemon Master by locating and defeating the several gyms scattered throughout the environment. In true Pokemon fashion, there's a ton of little critters to catch and train, as well as several side activities such as breeding, and a new addition known as the Battle Tower, which allows players to get stuck into the battling system. Crystal also introduced many notable additions and changes to the Gold and Silver formula that help set it apart. A huge one being the inclusion of finally being able to choose the gender of your character, which was one of the most requested features. Pokemon Crystal represents the culmination of the series on the Game Boy systems, so if you're looking for a Pokemon adventure to get into, this is the one to get.